Greetings everyone, this is TimeRider with kind of a special edition of Wee Little Cars, in that my project will be a 1/48 scale Corgi Iso Grifo. Back in September I did a Matchbox Iso Grifo, and for me it was kind of a turning point car. This was when I really started to concentrate on details that I had kind of let slide before, like interior detailing. This was my favorite project and may still be. Although the Wee Little Cars racer certainly up there. This Iso was in rough shape. It was a representation of the 7-liter with the penthouse hood, housing a big block tri-power 427 cubic inch LT1 and later a 454 inch Chevy, upping the Iso to 7.4 liters. An Italian car with Chevrolet Corvette running gear is pretty hard for a bow-tied boy like me not to fall in love. Of the 413 Type 1 Iso Grifos produced, 90 had the 7-liter engine. I'm going to customize this one, so stick around. I bought this casting in the UK, and specifically looking for this casting. I got it on eBay. It's really solid casting. There's a lot of things on it that are broken. I was actually kind of surprised at how small the posts were. And by the way, it's a pretty long video because I did a lot to this thing. So rather than me just dribbling on for the duration of the video, you may find some musical interludes. I decided to drill a pilot hole before drilling out the actual top of the post. Figured it'd make it a little easier. There was a lot of parts to it once I got it apart. Of course, there, were the wheels, which for some reason I can't get out of the frame. That plastic piece there is actually the suspension. And it was nearly broken, and I broke it the rest of the way. I was unable to repair it. I wound up having to dispose of it. The seats were kind of neat, though. They had little fold forward backs like an actual seat would have. I suppose with the opening doors, they thought it would be a good feature. The glass is really messed up. And it's missing one of the little jewels that Corgi likes to use in their headlights. I was actually kind of surprised at the lack of detail on the grille. And that plastic piece actually sits a little too far in. It's really weird, because in some places the casting is like they really went out of their way to be detailed, and other places they didn't. These doors are messed up. So at some point a decision is going to have to be made whether or not I want to try to repair the problem with them, or to just super glue them closed. I showed this on the bench, this car, and I was actually kind of surprised at a couple of people who have never done this telling me how easy this was to fix when I didn't even have the car part yet. It was just kind of, I get a kick out of comments like that. And as it turned out, I'll go into a little more when I repair the doors, but as it turned out, the fix that was proposed would not have worked. Anyway, into the primordial ooze it goes. Body, 2 doors. The base. And the hood. Give her a shake for luck. Of course, I want to get it back together at some point in time, so I'm going to clean up this post a little bit. Both of them, actually. And then I'm going to start getting it ready for paint. Which for me, as you know, starts with a wire wheel. There's a lot of detail on this model. It's actually kind of neat. You know, there's logos, raised logos and things that will be nice to detail in the finished product. Bottom fits on real nice. Clean that up a little bit. Clean up the doors. And a little bit of steel wool. You know, they made like 400 of these ISO Grifos, and that, you know, I think that's pretty cool because a lot of them are still on the road. And if you look on YouTube, you can find all kinds of videos. And of course, I want to give it a good polish. I always do. It's really funny working on this casting, though, because it's so big. I'm so used to dealing with little 1/64th. And the casting lines are not too bad. They're going to be fairly easy to get off, except maybe in a couple of spots. But there's one that runs along the top of all the quarter panels. It's the one here in this doorpost that's right above a logo that I think is going to be somewhat problematic. And of course, there's another one on that quarter panel. And I'm not so sure about that ISO Grifo on the trunk. I think that's just inordinately large and may actually detract from the model itself. So that's probably going to come off. And as you can see, as I scrape across this a little bit with a file, how dinged up the front of this thing is. I'm sure I can probably make it look pretty good, but I don't want to file too much off either. This grill is, the grill opening, of course, is way too deep. I'm sure they did that for their little sparkly headlights. They didn't want them to be too obvious. I don't know. But you know me. Time to file. And since it's a bigger casting, longer casting lines. But I guess I thought I'd show this speeded up because I want you to, get a sense for really how much filing I have to do on any project. Because what I'm doing here is probably about 10%, if not less, of what I actually wind up doing. And the base I painted with, I use, actually it's a Rust-Oleum product that's both primer and paint. Now if you look here, what these are receivers for doorposts. And if you look at the doors, you'll notice that they actually are supposed to have a pin right like that one there. And 3 of them are broken off. And that's why the doors won't hang straight. Doesn't have anything to do with the spring, as some people thought. The spring is fine. Now, replacing these would, oh man, it would be a fiddly bit of business. And I don't even know if you could do it well enough to get it to work. But in the absence of this support on the bottom and the support on the top, the door is never going to hang straight. And 3 of the 4 posts are broken. So I primed it, and a lot of times I'll prime a casting because it helps me see the places that still need a lot of work. Which is the case here. You know, I still had some spots left on these casting lines that I need to get off on both the front and the back. And I hadn't tapped it out yet either, so I figured as long as I am not in my final paint work yet, I might as well tap it out. You know, the posts look narrower than a matchbox, for example, but I think once I actually got them drilled out, it's just that the damn casting is so big, and it just makes the posts look really small. But these will work just fine to hold this thing together. Get a button screw in there because, you know, I gotta take it apart sometime. Now, for my money, the only reasonable solution to this is going to be just to glue these doors shut. So I just want to make sure I got it, you know, really well positioned in the door frame before I put my CV. Star Bond is what I'm using here. And this one had a little bit of a doorpost on it, so I wanted to make sure that it was in a good spot so that the base would fit on it before I glued it. I suppose too, if I needed to, I could just break it off. I mean, they're already broken, so. But once I got it glued on there, they turned out, I thought, pretty good. And now we're back to finishing up on our filing. And yep, the ISO Grifo on the trunk is going to go. It's too big, and I think it takes away from the model entirely. And since I'm not doing a restoration of this, it's coming off. Starting to look pretty good though. And once I file the casting lines off, we'll take a little bit of sandpaper to it. Just kind of smooth it out. I am going to prime this, so that'll help. A little bit more wire brush work. What I want to do is pretty much try to get all the primer off of it. That's one way to make sure you got a good clean casting, is to get all the primer paint off. And that last little bit of filing. This piece on the bottom is actually chrome, and so in the final product I am going to file that and sand it pretty smooth. The hood was actually in pretty good shape. I'm just kind of leveling it off a little bit. And that's the brown polishing block. Since I'm going to prime this, I wanted to go with something a little bit coarser. Not a lot, just a little. I mean, these are polishing blocks after all, but they do a nice job of leveling out the surface at least as much as it can be. And I didn't put it on the table, but you know, I like to see how stuff's gonna look. That hood riser is really kind of amazing. I read somewhere that you either love it or you hate it. I haven't decided yet. So I'm gonna throw a couple of coats of Duplicolor white on this, and I'm actually going to set it aside for a moment because this car has a ton of detail work to do. Starting with just a simple bath, that, you know, because everything's dirty. It's all in pretty good shape, or the interior is, I should say. The glass is just a mess. There's a big gouge in the front windshield. The only way I'm going to fix this is if I sand on it. So I got that to look forward to. The back window isn't too bad. It has its problems too. First I just started by doing a polish on it to see, really mostly just to see actually how bad it was. And like I said, I knew I was going to have to sand on it, so I started with coarser sandpapers and worked my way through the grades, and you know, eventually I got into my sanding pads, which is what you see here. And I actually got it in pretty good shape, and then I dipped it in gauzy, and I don't have any footage of that. You know what it looks like. I decided to go with a camel color. I saw a really nice easel on the internet, and it had kind of a camel color interior. I thought it looked good, and that was the color I decided to go with. Some of the interior detailing I did with a Sharpie, and some of it I did with a brush. It just depends on what part of it. The steering wheel was actually remarkably detailed. It was all kind of a brass color though, but I wanted to turn it into a chrome center and you know, black grips. Now this is the Redline Shop base coat is what I'm putting down here. I like this base coat because the metal flakes, I've said this before, the metal flakes are not enormous, so it gives a more realistic look to a metal flake paint job, and that's what I'm going to do on this, is a Spectraflame red. There's no way I would have been able to polish this well enough to lay the Spectraflame right onto the metal. I don't think that would have been possible. There was just too much nicking in the casting. I was probably fortunate I got it as smooth as I did. I've seen actual ESOs in red, and they're just beautiful. Of course, I had put a tack coat on, and trying to get that little center section, leave the center section of the hood alone, because I'm going to paint that flat black. They actually have a detailed hood liner on the inside of the hood, which is kind of cool. Corgi's an interesting company. You know, it's one of those companies that, you know, they're in the UK, and man, they made everything, and they seemed like although they made some smaller 1/64 stuff, they were really more well known for the big cars they did, the bigger cars and the highly detailed models. And I'm gonna fill in some details on this. You can see I've already kind of scraped some of the logos and the door handles, and here's one that's actually in focus. We'll paint these vents. Now, typically the top of that is the same color as the car, but I just thought it would look good in semi-gloss black. So that's what I did. And then for the headlights, what I did was I painted the headlight opening with my chrome pen, and then I filled the holes with UV resin. And I've created headlights this way before. It works pretty good. So let's take a step back and look at this, for lack of a better term, you know, gritty old, salty old ESO Grifo model. With busted doors and busted wheels, and I sourced some wheels online. I didn't take any footage of it. It was just me putting the axles in, and the suspension piece broke, so I wound up basically just gluing the axles to the frame, and calling it good. Anyway, let's take a look where I wound up. Yeah, it was a heck of a project. Took me a while to get it done. Maybe I was a little complacent here and there. But boy, I'll tell you, I really like how it turned out. It's a beautiful toy. The Corgi number 301. ESO Grifo 7-liter. Hey, I'm going to throw an episode of The Bench on the back of this, so if you want to hang around for that, if that's your kind of thing. Anyway, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was a little long, but it was a big project. So this is TimeRider, and I'll leave the light on for you. Hey, thanks for hanging around for this edition of The Bench. First, I just wanted to mention to everybody those wheels that I used on that ESO Grifo were from BBR Models, and I went to their website, and I didn't see any 1/43rd scale wheels. I saw 1/18th scale, but they looked like these, so I don't know if these were actually 1/18th scale and they just sort of worked or what. But anyway, and then moving on past that, I said that I wanted to do some more of those kind of fantasy re-release cars. So the first one that I'm going to do, after of course the pink Beatnik Bandit, is going to be this Red Baron, which I'm going to paint red probably. And well, that looks like it's a fun casting, so we'll see how that turns out. And from the Well Don't That Just Piss You Off page, this was the trunk deck on the Rolls Royce I was going to release tomorrow. I don't know if I'll be doing that now or not. I might have a different video up. But anyway, yeah, I was putting on clear coat, and I'm not even sure how this happened, to be perfectly honest with you. But of course, even though it's a small thing and it's on the trunk deck, that was like custom mixed paint. So I'm going to have to repaint the whole thing. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention that on April 25th, the Three Blind Mice will be having their 72 Ranchero build. If you go over to the Three Blind Mice page, there's an invitation video from Paul, and you can email him or me or George if you want to be a part of the build. All you got to do is get yourself the 72 Ranchero. And anyway, I hope everybody's having a good time being quarantined at home. Obviously, I'm building little cars. Everybody be safe. I'll see you at the next build.